Welcome to episode 35 of The Lowdown Show. I'm Neil Graham. This week I speak to Doug Wothke, better known around these parts as rtwdoug. Yes, RTW stands for around the world, and yes, he's done that on Indians from the 40s and Harleys from the 50s. Wothke is a modern-day motorcycle beatnik. But before we dive in, a word from our sponsor. Picture this, you're halfway through a DIY motorcycle fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. But it's okay because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything. Brake rotors, lights and tire exhaust systems, whatever you need. And it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. I was looking over your Instagram, and you look like, to me, well, it seems like you lead a lovely life, but you seem like a motorcycle beatnik, because you're at one time, this week you're over here or you're in Iowa, and next week you're helping a buddy with his bikes in Florida. So what exactly is it that you do? We'll get into your travels in a minute, but what do you do? What's a week for you?
Traveling and playing with antique motorcycles. I buy and sell parts, bikes, fix them up, not for other people. I don't have a shop with the doors open because I don't want customers. I shouldn't say I don't want customers. I don't want walk-in customers. So I don't have a sign. I don't have anything. People know me. They know that if I find something, I know people that are looking for it, or I do swap meets and whatever, this and that.
So give me an example of what you've stumbled across in the last couple of weeks. What bikes have you seen, bought, or wanted to buy and couldn't get? Give me a thumbnail sketch.
I drove to California and picked up some bikes, a couple of Ariels and a Mustang and a bunch of parts, a BMW, and got back from that trip, unloaded, turned around, went to Kansas and Texas, picked up a Benelli, a Panther that I had on loan to a friend's museum, 1912 Henderson that I'm going to get running and sell for a guy, and was able to get some fishing in along the way too. So
now, because I'm always mildly envious of people, because I looked on your Instagram and there's a beautiful, looks like original finish. Is it a 40 Indian 4? It's a skirted fender 4. So it's 41 4. Beautiful. And I've ridden an Indian 4 and they're gorgeous. And so you find these things and the rest of us are like, how could he find that? So where do you find this stuff? How do you do it?
That one I found through a friend of mine, because I was looking for a 4-cylinder, and it came from the original owner's family and it hadn't been on the road since the 50s. Now it's all mechanically redone, but the cosmetics haven't been touched. Still original paint, still got crust on it, and that's how I like them. I like them original.
It's a lot cheaper too, isn't it?
No, not really. It actually, they're worth more original than they are.
Oh, sorry, I meant cheaper to refurbish.
More of a pain though, because my friend that went through the motor on that 4, I said, whatever you do, don't clean anything.
Right.
He still cusses me over that he wasn't allowed to, make everything spotless before he put it together. I said, no, just clean the inside. Don't touch the outside. You can't have a shiny motor in an old looking chassis. It doesn't look right.
It doesn't work. No, it doesn't work. So are you saying that it's a combination of just sort of ear to the ground and long time contacts? Is that kind of it?
Yeah, I've had people from Adventure Rider, that follow me on there on my blog that I am way behind on in old school, dicking around in Doug's garage, and I've had people on there contact me because they knew somebody. I bought a 36 Indian Chief because of the guy on there. It was up in Northwest Washington. It was his friend's bike. His friend had a stroke, hadn't ridden it in a dozen years. So I flew up there, got it running, and rode it home.
And rode it home?
Yeah.
Of course, that's not a big deal for you. But Are there still deals out there? Because I think, pre-internet, and we are of the age of course, we lived much of our lives without the internet. It's as and in those days, not everyone knew what something was worth. And it seems like now everyone knows what it's worth, or they think they know what it's worth, and the number is usually sometimes separated from reality.
Oh
So
yeah, I
how
run.
has this sort of creative scavenging that you do, how has that changed over the decades with the advent of technology?
Oh well, some things are easier and some things are harder. Um, I don't know. Parts that's easier because people can send me pictures like right now instead of putting them in an envelope and mailing them to me. You don't have to look through classified ads in the back of magazines and stuff, or go to swap meets. I still do the swap meets thing, but um, yeah, and then of course, you got the people that, and this has always happened. You find an old bike and they their cousin told them it's worth 5 times more than it actually is worth. And then, they think you're just being an ass and trying to lowball them when you make them an offer. And even when I'll show them document proof at like auction results and stuff. Look, this is what this bike is worth when it's fixed up. It'll cost you 10 grand to get it in this condition. But, if you want to do that, here, you got the bike, just throw some money at it. And then you can, and they're like, well, it's not worth it. I'm like, exactly. So, I mean, it's worth it to me because I do it on my own time.
The Lowdown Show is presented by advrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. One thing that interests me is how the value of old motorcycles changes over time, and how it sort of reflects certain demographics as they age. And I'll give you an example, like although it's a bit of a rare case, but the Bring a Trailer phenomenon, which is people may not know, but it's a website where cars and motorcycles are sold. And you look at motorcycles on Bring a Trailer, and you'll see say a Honda CT70 or ST90 that might be $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 and not even finish the auction. And then you'll see, I don't know, a Harley Shovelhead that'll be $3,400. It seems that there's a lot of stuff, things that used to be disposable, like 70s Japanese motorcycles, are all of a sudden spiking in value. And what I've always thought of as the bikes that would really hold their value traditionally, like say 60s Triumph Bonnevilles, seem to struggle to reach the prices that they once did. Do you see this shift in your life as well?
For sure. And it's a timeline bubble. It's today, the stuff that's hot today is the stuff that was on sale when people, at whatever age now, were like 15 to 25. So they saw this Kawasaki H2 750 at the dealership. It was $3,000. They were, in college, whatever. They couldn't get it. Passed by. 30 years later, 40 years later, 50 years later, they're retired. They have money. They want to recapture their youth. They see this bike for sale. Oh, I wanted one of those as a kid. And they pay whatever it takes to get it. And I see it, or if they had the bike when they were a kid, and that's the CT 70s and 90s. So people had them when they were kids. Now they're older, and they want that bike because that's what they had when they were a kid. That's why Cushmans, which were hot 10, 15 years ago, are not anymore, because all those people have aged out or passed away. Same with Triumphs. British bikes in the last 10 years have really fallen, unless it's a real rare collectible bike, a Vincent, a Bruff Superior, racing bikes or something. But just your run-of-the-mill Triumph Bonnevilles have probably dropped at least 50% in price in the last 10 years. And it's just this age bubble. And if I had room to store all this stuff, I think the next big thing is late 80s, early 90s superbikes. All original GS6Rs. I don't know all the alphabet soup that all the Japanese bikes are, but the race bikes, that kind of stuff. Joe Racer can go buy it from the dealership, and I think that stuff is why I know it is. I've seen it starting to go up already. But it's the bikes that people wanted to buy when they were young and couldn't afford them, or they did buy them, but then they trashed them. They did wheelies, and they rode them like they were intended, and they were made to be ridden, used up, thrown away, buy a new motorcycle. So the ones that survived that, it's just like anything that was made to be used. I don't care what it was, if it was toys or cameras or anything that was made to be used and then disposed of that lasted, the values, up there.
For our seventh inning stretch, some words provided by our sponsor. Picture this. You're in the garage, your favorite room in the house, even though really it isn't a room in the house. And you're tuning up your engine with parts that you found on eBay. Every piece is just locking perfectly into place. You step back to admire your work, hands covered in grease. And because you're committed to riding that thing further than the odometer can even handle, you start thinking to yourself, you know what? I could probably also use some new brakes, maybe a shock. This baby deserves a new air filter. So you head right back to eBay. You can find whatever you need there. It's unreal. From headlights to air filters to exhaust systems, all the way to those carbon fiber rims you've had in your mind. eBay is the stocked garage of your dreams. And you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit, because eBay knows DIY fixes can be major and mods are always intense. So you need to know those parts are guaranteed to fit every time before you dive in, wrench first. And on the off chance you order a part and it doesn't fit, send it back. Simple as that. You know what you love more than your bike itself, of course, and that's riding it. You're serious when it comes to engine maintenance and locked in when you're headed into a build. And that's exactly why you start with eBay, minor fix or complete overhaul. You want to get your ride back on the road, and you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. So eBay created My Garage, where all you have to do is add your ride's info to get the exact parts that fit. When you see the green check, you're a click away from that part clicking perfectly into place. Now that you know all of this, imagine standing at that open garage door looking at the bike you love more than anything, knowing that anything is possible, whether it's keeping it on the road forever or turning it into something that's never been on the road before. Because with eBay, your garage just got a whole lot bigger. Get all the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. Now back to my conversation with Doug Wothke. So in 2009, I'm going to read off a list of some of the things you've done, and then we're going to get into it. So 2009, you rode around the world in a 62 Harley-Davidson Panhead. 2010, Europe and the Middle East on a shovelhead. 2011 in Russia. 2012, around the Black Sea. 2012, my cat just moaned. Even he was shocked. 2012, you did the Cannonball across the USA in a 1928 Indian Scout. And then 2014, you did the Cannonball in a 29 Harley. You haven't learned your lesson, obviously. You keep doing this. So let's start off with that trip on the 62 Panhead. Where did you go?
Well, that was my second round the world trip. My first round the world trip was in 2006 on a 1948 Indian Chief.
Oh, I did see those photographs. Okay, let's start off with that trip.
Okay.
Where did you go, and why the Indian?
Well, I was the summer before that, I was in North Africa on a KLR 650. And I picked up a copy of the book, The Long Way Round. And I was reading it, and interested. And I got to the point where, they were crying because KTM wouldn't give them free motorcycles. And, we don't know if we can make the trip and all this. I'm like, you're Obi-Wan Kenobi. Use the force of your checkbook and buy a damn motorcycle. So
and he's that, and he's rich.
Well, that's what I mean. Use the force of your checkbook. I mean, right. I understand it was drama and it was for the show and all that. And nothing against them for doing the trip. They did the trip, and that's great. And it really drug a lot of people into the adventure riding type thing. And it was a great boon for BMW for their bikes. But I was reading the book and I'm thinking, I could do this. I said, but I want to do it on an American motorcycle. Well, what do I know of? And I knew a friend of mine had this 48 Chief that he'd bought years before from the original owner. He took it apart to redo it, and it was sitting in boxes in his garage. So I got home, I called him, we made a deal. I went and got it, redid it that winter. And in April, I took off from Alabama and headed east until I got back to Alabama.
You know, there's a country song in there somewhere. I left Alabama, went east, and ended up in Alabama.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. So okay, so that's a very truncated version of your trip. But where did you go? What countries did you go through?
Well, I rode to Toronto first because Air Canada had a thing where you could put your bike in a crate and they'd fly you and the bike on the same plane to Europe. And then I got off in London at Heathrow, rode across Europe. At the time, there was something going on in Moldova, and I ended up having to take a ferry across the Black Sea, spent a couple of months in Russia, went to Korea, and then back to the U.S. It was like 23,000 miles.
And how did the bike survive the journey?
It broke a couple times, but it didn't break because of the bike. It broke because of the quality of the person I had do the work that I was not uncomfortable doing. And come to find out, I'd have probably done a better job than they did, but they were supposedly a professional, so I let them do it. And the worst thing was tearing up the transmission in Siberia and lost first and second gear. There's a shaft in there, and the bushing wore out and it fell down, so only 2 gears were touching. And got a hold of a local guy. Bikers in Russia, people in Russia are very friendly and helpful, but bikers are a very close-knit group, especially back then. And they all knew who I was, because they would actually, I'd leave a town and those guys would call the next town and have people be waiting on me when I got to town. And then, it's another night of go out and eat, and they want me to drink, and I don't drink, but and then next morning I get up, or sometimes I'd stay a couple of days if I was having fun. I'm not in a hurry. I got to get home before it gets cold. That's all all I was worried about. I didn't plan anything in ahead other than my Russian visa. And so I tore up the transmission. This guy came and picked me up in this Nissan Patrol, which is like a Toyota 4Runner, and an Indian Chief will fit in the back of one if you put it in backwards and leave the front end hanging out. Went to his place, had a garage. We unloaded the bike. It was like 11 o'clock at night. But we're going to look at it next morning. We get to looking at it, and I, pull the top of the transmission off, and I'm thinking, okay, how long is it going to take FedEx to bring me parts here? And his dad showed up, and he's looking at it, and he speaks no English. And that was my first time in Russia. I spoke no Russian at the time. And explained to him, showing him what's going on. And he beckons me to follow him, and we go over. He opens up this little trap door with stairs. We go down there. He's got a full machine shop. He's a retired machinist teacher for a local high school. So it took him like about 14 hours total, 2 days worth of work. Pulled the transmission out. He line bored everything, put in a wheel bearing out of some Russian car in there, and put it all back together, made some special tools. I put it back in the bike the next afternoon, and I'm riding it around. I come back, and I'm like, it's great. It's perfect. What I owe you? He says, well, do you have enough to finish your trip? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm good. What I owe you? And it was like, I think it was 2,000 rubles, which is at the time was $60 for 2 days worth of machinist work. I'm like, man, you want to come to the U.S., man? I got you a job, man. I can afford $30 a day. You come to the U.S. and work for me. But those gears are still in the bike, and I still ride it like that. So you did a good job.
The Lowdown Show is presented by advrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. Not to turn things political, we're not going to go there, but there, where we are in history right now, there is a big divide between, there's a lot of strife in the world, and I think you going through Russia and your experiences just in general with traveling, and I think everyone should travel because it gives you, it gets you away from the political entities that would attempt to control us, and you meet real people.
Yeah.
And so here you are, an American in Russia. You are avowed enemies.
No.
What did you find?
The people are wonderful. I've spent over a year in Russia. I've crossed it 4 times now. been to Magadan, Vladivostok, Sochi. I haven't been to Murmansk yet, which is on my list. That's the northwest corner. And I keep wanting to go, but I can't get my visa renewed because of, all this stuff going on over there right now. And the people there are great. They're helpful. It's like every country. You can't judge the people by their government, including ours. I'm not saying our government's good, bad, or whatever. I'm very anti-partisan. I don't, but I hear things. I'm on Facebook, so I hear these rumors.
Well, if it's on Facebook, it has to be true.
Yeah, of course.
What is it about Russia that you find so compelling?
I like the people. And I love the fact that my whole life I was brought up as they were the evil empire and they were horrible and they were going to kill us. And we had, we're, duck down in the hallway or underneath your desk or something because, they might bomb us. That was a little bit before my time. That was more 60s. But, still you heard about it. And I get over there and I talk to people and they were told the exact same thing about us. Literally word for word, be careful, the Americans are going to bomb us. And we laughed about it. And it's like, well, there's our stupid fucking governments. Oh, sorry. Don't know if I can say that word on there. Our fucking governments.
Oh, that's way better. Way better.
But yeah, and it's like a lot of the Muslim countries I traveled through. The people are great. They're helpful. I get fed. I broke my shovel head. I was in Iraq, and I broke the piece on the frame. And I found this guys that had a welder, little shop, and they fixed it. Wouldn't take a dime from me. And then because of my great planning abilities, I was in Iraq during Ramadan, which they're not allowed to eat or drink anything during daylight hours for 30 days. But they made some phone calls. I mean, it was lunchtime. They had me brought, a 2 liter of Pepsi, a lunch, all this stuff. And they wouldn't eat any of it or drink any of it. But they wanted me to be, comfortable and eat and all this. And it was really amazing how friendly they were. Because again, if you listen to the media, they're all out to kill us, and they're really not. It's the people just want to be left alone, raise their families, earn some money, have some friends, go fish and go hunt and play with their cars, whatever. It's sad that we, let the media divide people as bad as they do. Now, I'm not saying there's not bad people out there. There are, but they're on both sides of the fence in every aspect. There's bad people everywhere. But the good people outnumber them by far.
I think you only have to travel, and especially when you're. I think too when you're, and you certainly have done a lot more travel than I have. But when you are on your own on a motorcycle, you are so vulnerable, and everyone understands that immediately, don't they? That you are not a threat because you're on your own. What can you possibly do?
Yeah. And if you travel by yourself, you meet a lot more people because if you're in a group, people don't approach you. But if you're by yourself, everybody, annoying and not annoying, want to come up and talk to you. And they all, get stopped by the police and they all have the same questions. And then, that's how I learned how to speak a bit of Russian is because everybody was asking me the same questions. And, where are you from? What's that bike? How big is the motor? How much power does it have? What does it cost? Where are you going? Where are you from? So I learned how to say all that stuff. And then I kept going from there. I'm still not fluent, but, I can have a conversation with a motorcycle guy there anyhow.
And now you've done something that I've always been interested in, which is the Cannonball runs. And you've done it, if I'm not mistaken, twice, correct?
4 times.
4 times, of course.
Yeah, 12, 14, 16, and 18. And I did a couple of the motorcycle chase, which is for modern bikes from 1930 to 60.
Which makes you 187 years old then. But what's it like to head out? So in 2012, you did it on a 1928 Indian Scout. Now, is that a 101 Scout?
Yes.
So that's sort of Indian's most legendary motorcycle. Never ridden one. but you headed off and went across America. What's it
Yeah,
like?
that Cannonball went from New York to San Francisco. So I left my house in Alabama with some tools and camping gear, rode to New York, did the Cannonball, and then rode home.
Do you know the total mileage?
The Cannonball, I think, was 3,700. They're usually around 3,800 miles, something like that.
Plus your other rides to get there and home.
Yeah.
So
I don't have a working speedometer, so I don't know how far it was.
What's it like to head off? What's it like to do that kind of mileage on a bike? How much would you do a day?
You know, when I travel, like this summer, I just got back. I spent the summer in Northern Europe on a 1937 Rudge, which is a British bike. You know, I don't really have a set mile per day. It's kind of it's nice to do because I'm always on back roads, obviously. I don't get anything 4-lane if I can help it. And maybe just to get through a city or something. But, you know, I don't know, 200 miles a day, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Maybe I'm having fun. Maybe there's something to stop and look at. I meet someone and they invite me over to see their bike collection and then invite me to spend the night. So I make 20 miles that day, whatever. You know, I try not to have itineraries.
What's your most in all of the traveling that you've done on old bikes? And you just gave us a great example of fixing the transmission in Russia. But what's the sort of the most what's the most inventive, not that wasn't, but what's the most inventive fix you had to come up with on the road?
Oh, geez. There's a bunch of them, but I can't think of anything that, I mean, when you travel on old bikes, you just come up with stuff. And to me, because I'm always tinkering and fixing things along the road, it's hard to think of something that really stands out that, you know, in my mind that of a really weird fix. But, you know, I've torn transmissions apart along the road. I've, you know, had to take the heads off along the road, just changing tires. Oh, okay. So I'm on my Indian, and this one was not funny at the time, but I'm on my Indian. I've just gotten into Russia, and Indian has on the front rear wheel they have these 5 lug bolts that go through your brake drum into your wheel hub. Well, actually, the other way, through your wheel hub into your brake drum, because there's threads in the brake drum. And I was told, take a spare set of lug nuts with you just in case. Okay, so I had a spare set with me. And I'm leaving this motel in Russia, and I'm wheeling the bike backwards out of where I was parked, and I hear this ting, and I look down, and there's one of my lug nuts laying there. I'm like, oh. So I looked at the bike, and there was 1 left, and 2 were broken off, and 2 were gone. So I had to get the wheel off, which was fun because with the skirted fender, you can't get it up high enough. So I had to like put blocks of woods and lean the bike over and get it up before I could get the wheel out. And then come to find out that in someone's stupid idea, they put different threaded lug nuts on the front wheel and the back wheel. The front wheel was fine thread, rear wheel is coarse thread. Mm. I don't know who came up with this idea. Harley doesn't do that. They use the same front and rear. So
was that an Indian thing, or was that an owner? Yes. That?
No, that was the Indian thing.
Oh.
So of course I had a set for the front, and they were fine thread, and I needed some for the rear that were coarse thread. So the guy at the hotel knew a machinist. I gave him my 5 new lug nuts and my 1 old one, and a guy, he took it over there, and the guy hand cut, because everything over there is metric, so he hand cut these threads, standard threads, 1/4-20 into these bolts so I could use them. And the threads were, you know, one was like this, one was like this, one was like this, one was like this, but they went in, and I call it Russian Loctite, because they still I mean, I've pulled them out and I've changed the rear wheel and stuff, or the tire. But yeah, I still use them because they go in, they don't come loose. So that wasn't that great of a fix, but it's just one that sticks in my mind.
Well, especially when you think it's going to be as simple, because you think you've planned for it, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh boy.
Yeah, and that was the worst part. I thought, oh, I got this. I got these parts right here.
Tell me about riding through Ukraine. When did you go over?
22, like 4 months after the war started.
What did you find?
Oh, the cops were too busy to hassle me and ask for bribes. That was nice. Some of the hotels were shut down. A lot of hotels were shut down. But so I have friends there because I've been there a lot. So I was able, for the most part, I was able to kind of fudge my way around. Even if I didn't know somebody in the town, I knew somebody that knew somebody in the town. The most interesting thing was I went to near Kyiv. I went to Irpin and Bucha, which are both towns that were kind of like really attacked hard. And this local lady, through a friend of mine, took me around on a tour to show me because the fighting there was gone. It was over with. They moved farther east. But I did have air raid sirens go off as soon as I got into Kyiv, which was interesting. But so she took me around and showed me these neighborhoods that there's like houses that are leveled, there's apartment buildings that are damaged, grocery stores that were leveled, and you see all this stuff on TV. You see the burnt stuff and the blown up stuff and the rubble and all that. But what you don't get from TV is the smells. The smells after a war they're pretty intense. There's a lot of mixed up, smells. And then, there was places parking lots where they were just stacked full of blown up cars. And then alongside the road, there's, 20 blown up tanks that are sitting there. And, the locals are climbing around on them and taking pictures and stuff and painting them up and that. So it was, and some of the roadblocks, there was a lot of roadblocks. I go through this one, and you had to weave through these barriers, and I saw this big mound in front of me. It was all camouflaged with this black hole. And as I got about 30 feet from it, I looked up, and there was a guy there, and it was a tank. It was pointed right at me. I'm smiling and waving. Hey, so he knows I'm not a threat. But yeah, then people would come out and, check my papers. I had machine guns. And once they figured out I was just some idiot from Alabama riding around, it was like, why are you here? I said, well, my friend in Kyiv makes really good borscht. So he invited me. Oh, okay. That was a plausible reason for a Ukrainian.
Were you ever concerned for your personal safety while you were there?
No, not really.
You run something in the camp that you run in Moto Camp, Bulgaria. What is that?
So I met Polly, my girlfriend, when I was on my first round the world trip in 2006. And I went back, visited her, and I always just had this vision of for one, I wanted a place so I could keep all my stuff in Europe. And for two, I was like, I'd been to other motorcycle kind of themed places, but I figured, I think I could do this better. And so bought the place in 2007, we're still, it's still a work in progress. So we added more stuff this year. So we have camping, we have bed and breakfast, we have a house for rent, apartments, we keep expanding it. And it's become, every year it gets busier and busier, which most of that's thanks to Polly and our friend Ivo, that he's a Bulgarian, and then they run it all summer. I pop in and out, but mostly I'm just out riding around. I spent a month there this year. I tried to spend time there every year, but they're the reason it's successful. I just had the idea, and they've pretty much, we still, have ideas and stuff that we all, agree or disagree on or whatever, and try to keep it moving forward. But yeah, we have a lot of people come through there. It's nice. So you pull up, you set up your tent, get a room, whatever. There's almost every day there's someone else there, at least one other person on a motorcycle traveling that you can talk to. And a lot of times we're booked solid for like weeks at a time from different people, or people will show up because they want to spend a night and then they're there for a week because it's nice and they don't want to leave. It's safe, it's secure, there's internet, got a bar, all the comforts of home.
Now I'm going to ask you a personal question. Because not everyone, but many people watching this will think, okay, or listening to this will think, okay, that sounds great. But how do you pull it off financially? How do you do it? This lifestyle that you've made.
I don't finance anything.
But you still you've got to fly a motorcycle somewhere. You've got to eat when you're there. You got to buy fuel,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I work hard all winter, and then come springtime, I take off and go fart around. It actually, and people that travel pretty much know this, you can live about as cheap on the road as you can at home. You still got to eat, still got to pay your phone bill, you still got somewhere to sleep. And I'm not a big, I don't stay at the Hampton or the Hilton. I stay at I call them the Hindu Hiltons here in America. They have that rewards program. You stay 10 nights, you get a free cup of curry. So they're cheap. They're not the best, but and once you get farther east, I mean, Western Europe can be pricey, but there's still good deals on places to stay. You just got to figure it out. And, I know a lot of people, I meet a lot of people, I meet friends of friends. So, I get offers for places to stay. So it's not that expensive.
But how do you do it? Because one thing that in the road trips I've done here in North America, used to be, say you're in the, New Hampshire, Vermont or something, which is sort of good riding, not so far from me. But, what used to be $54 motels and you get a couple of guys, you split it, all of a sudden you go into these towns and sometimes some of these places are, $250.
I don't stay there.
but how do you find places? Are you just more patient than I am?
Patient, and if it comes down to it, I'll sleep. Before I spend $250 to sleep in a motel room, I'll curl up in my jacket and sleep in a bus stop. I'm just not paying that kind of money for a room. To me, it's just ridiculous. I'm not going to say it's stupid because a lot of smart people I know do that, but to me, it's ridiculous to spend that much for 7 hours of sleep or whatever. I can be uncomfortable and save that money and travel for a bunch more days on the money that I save by not spending $250 on a motel room.
I slept in the lobby of a motel once. There wasn't anyone there, and it didn't look like anyone was going to show up, so I just slept on the floor.
That would be perfect because you don't have to worry about weather or bugs. Or I was on the Trans-America Trail, and there's in Branson, Colorado, which is right after this really steep climb out of New Mexico into Colorado that was not mentioned on the damn map. That was a rough climb. I get to this town and there's nothing there, and it's starting to get dark. But there's the old jail from the 1800s, and there's 2 cells, and they're open, and it's like a little park, and it had a concrete bunk in there. And yeah, I spent the night in jail in Branson, Colorado. And while I was there, some local guy showed up, and he was the local pastor of the church, and he was apologizing because usually they let people stay at their house, but they already had guests. I'm like, oh man, I'm good here. So then he went home, he brought me back dinner. So I'm like, okay, that's nice, because there was literally nothing in this town. And so yeah, it's just, you have to be flexible, I guess. If you want to save money, you got to be flexible.
To follow along with Wothke's happy trails, hit up his Instagram account at rtwdoug. And for more information about Moto Camp Bulgaria, visit motosapiens.org. In closing, a word from our sponsor. Picture this, you're halfway through a DIY motorcycle fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. But it's okay because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything. Brake rotors, lights and tire exhaust systems, whatever you need. And it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. Thank you for listening to The Lowdown Show.